Hi and welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be unboxing and reviewing the Camel Artist acrylic colors. So this is 12 shades which is there inside it. I am super excited to unbox this because this is a medium that I have been using for over 15 or 18 years of my life, and I absolutely love creating things with this. So let's unbox it and quickly get on to creating a very beautiful painting with this. So I'm just going to open the box and then we'll talk about all of these colors individually, the price that I picked it up for, and the painting that we're going to be making today. So here's the set. This one I picked it up for about INR 350 rupees, and these are the shades which are inside it. There's the lemon yellow, the permanent yellow deep, yellow ochre, scarlet lake, crimson lake, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, sap green, viridian hue, burnt sienna, black, and titanium white. So this is an interesting packaging because my tubes from earlier don't have this tiny logo over here or this tiny artwork which it's like a palette with a brush. That's very interesting. I like how they're doing this packaging right now. So each one is about 9 ml. These are small 9 ml tubes. You also get these in multiple sizes. This was one of the smallest size which I have picked up to show any of you who are beginners who want to get into acrylic painting. This is absolutely perfect for you. So I have used this acrylic set from Camel for about 15-20 years of my life, and I really love them. I think I cannot stress enough about how it is really not important for you to worry about the cost of your materials. You can still make very beautiful things with low cost and medium budget materials. Alright, so let me just show you one of the tubes and what it is like. So here is the tube. You will get the name of it, you'll get the serial number, it'll tell you the series, and it'll give you all of these other details. So when you have to go pick up any specific color, so only the first time you may need to buy a set. Otherwise, mostly what you would do is you'll figure out what your color palette is like, and you'll just go and pick out those individual tubes which come in like bigger sizes. You even get 30 ml, you also get bigger tubes, so you will end up buying those once you start making bigger paintings. So the first thing I'm going to do today is to create swatches of all of these individual colors, and then I will teach you basically how to use these kind of acrylic paints, the kind of palette you should use with it, and the paper and the sheets along with it, and then we'll make a very beautiful painting. So stay till the end to make a very beautiful beach painting along with me today using acrylics. In case you do not have acrylics but you still want to create the beach painting, please use your poster paints or even gouache. So I have here an acrylic sheet. This will be about like 400 GSM sheet, or anything above 300 basically is good enough for acrylics. Anything less than that, you will not be able to create your painting. It will be really hard to use, so I would not recommend that. And this palette over here is called as a peel-off palette. I prefer using this compared to everything else because you can literally peel off your paints once they dry. So acrylic as a medium, you cannot activate it once it dries. So you'll have to be really careful about that. So I would highly recommend you to get these peel-off palettes. I don't think they're very expensive. You could get it for about INR 200, I think. Starts with that. I'm also going to be using some round and flat brushes. I recommend you to have a separate brush set for your watercolor paintings and for acrylics, because the acrylic ones tend to wear off a little sooner unless you take care of them like really well. So here the brushes that I'm using, you can see the paint on them. These are from acrylic paints. I cannot even see what size this is, but these are from Artificials, and I really highly recommend them for your acrylics. So let's start off. I'm going to start off from the end over here. This is the viridian hue. So I'm going to put like a little bit of it onto my palette over here and show you the consistency on this sheet. So you do end up using water, but then very little. You don't really need a lot of water for your acrylics. In fact, you want to get a very opaque consistency. That's the one that you should aim for, which is why it is okay for you to use as less water as possible. So with acrylics, you do not have to worry about creating a dark over light or light over dark. In fact, you can go ahead and create with any color. So if you're somebody who's into watercolors, your brain is wired to think in a specific way, saying you have to do the light colors first and then move on to dark. With acrylics, you don't have to do that. So this was my Viridian hue. Next is my sap green. And you can see the consistency of this. So you also can create a lot of interesting paintings with acrylics by using very thick material. So these do tend to dry out really fast as compared to oil paints. So you can play around with it. You can just use some knife, palette knife, and then use good amount of paints and then create some beautiful paintings with it. Now another thing that happens is with these acrylic colors, you get two kinds of consistency. One is the heavy body and one is the regular one. So the heavy body is the one which will be much thicker in terms of the paint, the creaminess, like this will be very heavy. So I'll show you the example over here. So if you see, this is pretty light, like it moves around really well, and the heavy body would be pretty thick. So even in the tube, it will be pretty thick. You will get like only bigger tubes. You do not get them. I haven't seen them in this smaller set of 9 ml at all. So that's basically when you want to create texture painting, you want to show like you want to use knife painting. So then you would prefer to use that. So this one here was the Prussian blue, and now I'm going to a crimson lake. Acrylics, especially this particular one, tends to dry out pretty with a glossy finish. I have seen a couple of ones which dry out matte finish, not of this brand. So you generally would find acrylics to have a pretty glossy finish. So another thing is with this set, you will not get your primary colors like this. There's no red specifically. There's a scarlet lake and then there is a crimson, but you won't really get like a permanent red. This is still good. This is still a very good red. It is just that when you mix it with some white, you won't really get the kind of feel that you would normally want. This is still a good red. It's just that when you mix with white, you won't probably get like a similar finish that you would get when you're using a primary red. Okay, so from here, I'm moving on to the permanent yellow deep. Now, all of these tubes do have the color pigment over here, I mean like a paper that has been printed, but it won't be completely matching. So you will pretty much like get a good idea of what the color is, but don't expect that every time is going to be matching. Like the cobalt blue looks very different over there as compared to the actual color here. So I've put like 2 swatches right now. One is going to be the permanent yellow deep, and then is the yellow ochre. So here we are trying the permanent yellow deep. Use almost no water, like very little bit of water. They are very creamy. I really like working with these colors because I don't have to work around too much to fix my paints. The flow is very easy and simple. Okay, so I have 4 more. I have the lemon yellow, the burnt sienna, the black, and the white. Now, one thing that I find a little difficult with these tiny tubes is initially the caps are fine, but then the more you start using the color, sometimes your color will stay out like over here, and then you tend to close them up and not open them properly, and you'll notice that it gets stuck. So a lot of times I do have that problem. So I prefer the taller tubes for that 15 ml, 30 ml. I really would prefer that as compared to these. So I've got some last 4 colors, some black. We'll also add some white. Once it dries out, it is not going to get activated with white. So it's okay if my palette has some dried paint stuck onto it at the bottom. Okay. So white I'll also mix with all of these colors and show you a pastel shade in another sheet. That would be exciting to have. So normally I make swatches only of the actual colors, but this time I want to make also by mixing the white with all of them, because that's what I enjoy working with acrylics for. You can make like the wide variety of colors by mixing the blacks and the whites. This is your brown. So some of the colors will be pretty thick from the tube, some of them will not be, and that's completely okay. It just means that you may need to add another layer of it. Black is quite strong. So these are the colors out of the box. I'm not trading for white because I think it's not going to be seen, so it's all right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another swatch sheet by mixing all of the whites. So you will get to understand what's the beauty of these colors, and when you mix it with white, how well you can use them in your paintings. So it's basically all about how much of white you're going to be mixing with the colors. So it's still not dried. It takes a little bit of time to dry, which is good. Oops, I should have done it on the other side first. It's okay, all right. It's such a beautiful color. These reminds me of macaroons. And next we're going to the sap green with some white. And as soon as you add white, the consistency or the body of the acrylic also changes. It becomes really thick. So it's really nice to use it that way because when it's very watery, you can see through the paper. You can see the paper through this, and it doesn't look very nice, you know. I don't enjoy it so much when it's like that. Like for example, for the red, you can see that it's pretty thick, the black is pretty opaque, the Prussian blue is pretty opaque, but some of the colors are not. So when you add any black or white or any other color, even two colors, when you like join them together, you will mix them together and use, you will notice that the consistency of it changes. For the second one, I'll make in the same style, I think. Okay, Prussian blue and white. And then next I am moving on to the Crimson Lake. So these are the two colors that you will see a huge difference, you know, when you add white to it. This completely looks very pinkish, so like sticks to its name of crimson. Then we are moving on to the red. Here it's called as the Scarlet Lake. So this is what I was saying, you know, it's a little different from, you know, if you mix white with permanent red. Then next I'm mixing the permanent yellow deep. This entire palette is so much more soothing for the eye. The next is the yellow ochre. So if I'm going to do a beach painting, I will mix the yellow ochre with white. I normally never use the colors as it is from the acrylic tubes. I always mix them with some color, either two colors together or with white. 99% I think I always mix it with the white. Oops, I created the gray first. I have to pick up a little more white because this still looks pretty black. Okay. Now don't take out too much of color on your palette in the beginning unless you know you're covering a larger area, because what tends to happen is your paints will start drying out and you can't really activate them at all. So once it dries, it's completely waste. And you also don't want like a big blob on your palette and half of it is dry and half is not dry. Like for example, if you add a small big blob, the top layer would have dried but the inside layer is still wet. But you still cannot use it very well. You know, it'll create like these small specks will be there and it's just so hard to use them. So be careful about that. You'll slowly get the hang of it once you start making a lot of paintings and once you start making a lot of mistakes. So now here are my two swatches of the colors, which are made out of these. I really like them. I am a big fan of these paints. I've been using them for close to 15 to 18 years, like I was saying. and this is my go-to color palette. I love these colors, especially this one over here. But I think, you know, there's a wide variety that you can create by just mixing the different amounts of white. Sometimes you can add more white, sometimes you'll add less white, sometimes the amount of black that you will add to them would be different, so you'll get different shades, and then you'll also mix up two colors and you can find so many different variations that you can create with it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a canvas and I'm going to make a beach painting using all of these colors, at least like most of these colors, whichever I can, and I'll give you a step-by-step tutorial of how to do that. So we're going to now start painting. You will have noticed my background changed suddenly. This is a different cutting mat that I use specially for acrylic. So what happens is acrylic colors are permanent. So if they are they come on my table, they're going to stay there permanently. On my clothes, they're going to be permanent, which is why I have this particular cutting mat that I use specifically only for my acrylic painting. This is a tip that you should probably think about, you know, have a particular space or have like a sheet that you always use. Don't use newspapers or any other flimsy one, because if you have the fan on, they may just fly off and it'll be really hard to like manage it. So now we're going to begin with creating the beach painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is just very basic sketching. You don't have to add too many details because acrylics is very opaque in terms of its color. So what will happen is if you add a lot of drawing, once you paint, everything is going to get hidden since it's opaque. So just do the basic things, that is for you to block out colors, and then on top of that you can either use your pencil or you can use like a chalk to draw over it. I'm going to do a simple beach painting, not too simple but at the same time not too complicated. So this is going to be my line of horizon here, and I want the beach, the water to be over here, and here is where the sand is going to be. So I hope this is visible. So the horizon is here and here will be the sand, this will be the beach water. So the clouds and the sky would come here. So we'll start with the sky. So what I normally prefer is I always use only flat brush when I'm using canvas, because I think it sits really well, it paints quite nicely. So I've got a couple of brushes. You can use like really big size brushes because that helps you to cover the area in just like 2 strokes, and it's so much nicer and fun to use that. So what I'm going to do is pick out some colors onto my palette. So for my sky, I'm going to have a lot of white. Okay, you need a lot of white when you're doing your acrylic painting. And then I've got some cobalt blue. I'll just add it over here where it was earlier. And we need some Prussian blue too. Now when I was saying that you'll have to use the paints pretty opaque, there are some techniques where you will not be always using it in an opaque manner. So I will tell you that today. We'll do a couple of things in that style, especially for our sky. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pick out, I'm just going to tilt a little bit because it's easier for me to paint that way. So I'll just tilt my screen. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take first some Prussian blue, and I'm going to add a little bit of it over here, and then I'm taking some cobalt blue. So what I'm going to do is, once I've added a little bit of this, don't forget to add it also in the edges, because this canvas has these edges, and if you don't cover them, it's going to look very, very ugly. Okay, and I'm picking out some white right now and just going over it left and right. Wherever you need, if you think that it's too grainy and it's not very smooth, then please pick out some water and then just do the same strokes left and right. Again, don't forget your edges. This is why I need a cutting mat at the back, because when I do my edges, I go over it. I go over the base, whatever is there. So I think this acts as a protective layer for my table. Oops, I mixed some black with it, so quickly have to wash my brush. If you go wrong in the first layer, there's absolutely nothing to worry about, because with acrylics, if something goes wrong, you just wait for it to dry and then you paint over it. In fact, you can finish a painting, and if you don't have too many canvases, you want to just keep practicing, wait for it to completely dry, and then paint over it all over. You know, like you'll notice that you can make 100 paintings with just one canvas. It's absolutely perfect when you're practicing. I prefer a canvas compared to the sheets. Sheets are good for you to start practicing. Sheets are slightly different from canvas. Like canvas, you really need to prep them. So what I also tend to do a lot of times is I will add a layer of white and keep that ready on all of my canvases. I think I did do that on this, where I have added a layer of white. When I get the canvas, immediately I add a layer of white and then I let it dry overnight, and the next day I use my canvas, because then it's very easy for the canvas to take in the colors. So try that out. So while this dries, I'm going to just take a little bit of Viridian Hue also onto my palette, and we'll wait. We'll not add in immediately for the water. I'm going to first add the layer of sand over here, and then we'll move on to creating the water. I like how the sky is. It's pretty smooth and nice, which is why I'm leaving it as it is. I'm going to use a different brush because I don't want the colors to get messed up. Picking out some yellow ochre. This will require quite a lot, so I'm not putting it at that edge over there. Maybe here. There is also the transparent acrylic sheet that you can get for your paints. Mixing already a little bit of white with the yellow ochre, because then it makes it a little easier for me to go with the flow. This is another technique you can do if you feel that you don't want to add the base color first and then this white. You can just mix them up. So just make sure that it's not too smooth. You know, I want a little bit of darker color here and there. And it's cool to not stick. In fact, I don't want to stick to that because I'm going to have the waves over here. So you will be able to see a little bit of sand through the water. So you can see the texture of the paper through, which is why it's very important for you to add like a couple of layers. Don't want the canvas to be seen through. Do the edges in the beginning itself when you're doing the painting, otherwise in the end it will become a pain. It'll get difficult. Sometimes it'll come a little bit over here and you won't be able to fix it. It just becomes a very tedious process. So I just like finishing it as when I'm painting. Alright, so this is good. You can add some brown if you want to give like a little bit of darker color, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to add now colors for my ocean. So for the ocean is what I have taken the Viridian Hue for. So what you're going to do right now is we're going to mix a couple of colors for the water. I would normally use a teal, but this set does not come with a teal already, so I'm going to use only these colors. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of cobalt blue, a little bit of Viridian Hue, and some white. And I'm going to create one color. So this is one of the colors that I'm going to be using for my water. So I'm just going to add a little bit of it. I really like the color. It makes me feel like going to the beach immediately. Taking some cobalt blue for the back, and since I haven't washed my brush, you can see how the Viridian Hue cobalt mix is mixing now with just the plain cobalt, and it's creating a very nice color. And some Prussian blue, very little. So the Prussian blue I'm taking just at the tip, and you'll notice the way I'm holding my brush is also like that. I'm just holding it at the tip. So here I have to literally tilt my head to make sure that I cover the edges. Okay, so I'm quickly washing my brush. I'll take some white and then I will go from the bottom to top. Now another thing is I don't want the white to mix too much. Like I don't want these two colors to merge with each other at all. So you just have to be careful. because then the yellow ochre will go inside the beach and it will not look nice inside the water, the ocean water. I don't want that. I don't like the feel of that. Okay, don't make it too smooth. We want the different colors to be seen. Now here cobalt has become less, so I'm just adding a little more. You can even take a little bit of viridian directly and add in a few areas. I'm using more of the tip of my brush to do that. This really gets better each time you paint. You get more confident with your strokes. Just know that with acrylics, you can go wrong 100 million times. You can fix it easily after that. So, which is why it's a medium that I really like working with. Not because I want to fix the problems, because I go with the flow. I don't try to fix it too much, because then you get lost in the details and you just want it to be perfect. It's okay for it to not be completely perfect. I'm going to now wait for this to completely dry before I do the waves and do the other details at the bottom. I'm just checking if this requires a little bit of color, because I don't want the canvas to be seen. So now I'm going to take a little bit of white and go over this. So just this area. I will not take the yellow ochre up. I'll just merge and finish it over here only. So we now wait for it to dry, and then I'll show you how to add in the details. Now that my base has dried, I'm going to add the waves in the front. So I'm going to pick out just some white. Oops, that's a lot of white, but it will be useful. Alright, so I'm going to take now a round brush to do this. You can use also a flat brush, so I'm using a slightly rigged brush, and I'm going to pick out some white, and basically I'm going to create the end of the wave. So let's say the wave is still here. So don't forget again to put it on your edges, because you want a very clean finish. And apply like a thick layer of white here. Okay, so now I'm going to dry out my brush, removing all the excess paint from it. I'm going to just pull the white inside. So there's very less white here, so I'm going to add a little more. That's why we need like a thick layer of white. Okay, removing all the excess and pushing it inside. Whenever there's excess paint in your brush, just remove it. This side has very less, so I'm just adding a little. Whenever there's less, don't worry about it. Just pick it up from the nearby one, or just add a little more. You can also use a reference image to understand what kind of wave pattern you want, and just go with the flow. Wherever there is water over there, just add it this way. I'm going to switch to a slightly thinner brush so I can add the waves very well, and it's like very delicate. I don't want very thick lines to be there. So this part will come over time. Don't worry if you don't get it in the beginning perfectly. You just need a little bit of patience to do this. The first few times I did, I would look at an image and then I would try to follow the flow of the waves, and after a point I got used to it and I would create my own waves. In some areas you can show a lot of white and some less. Don't put a lot of pressure always with your brush, and if you put pressure you'll get darker lines, or like more paint will fall on the canvas. If you put less pressure, then lesser color will come on it, and it'll look really good. It'll be very interesting that way, so play around with it. Make sure the edge is a little more in terms of the white. I love making these paintings. It's just so soothing and it makes me want to go to the beach. I'm using a little watery part now because I want slightly lighter white. So here's where we are using the transparency. We're not using opaque white. Okay. And what I want to do is I also want to create the clouds. So I'm going to take this white and just make the brush sleep, and then I just add it like this. This gives a very interesting feel to the clouds. You can even take a little bit of water and just blend the edges, so it'll just get a little blurred, and that gives a very interesting feel to the entire thing. Picking out some water. Okay, I will add a little bit of white inside. Let's say if there's some wave. So here right now there's not much of wave. I haven't added a lot of waves. So if you want to add wave, what should you do? So let's say I take some viridian, some cobalt, and maybe some white. You just have to create a slightly darker area. So I could have like a little bit of darker flow here, darker flow here. And over there on top of it, I should add a little bit of white as waves. Like these are waves that are crashing. Again, this is not necessary to do. You will take water and you will, same like the clouds. You just fade it out. You don't want it to be too obvious. So here I'm going to add a little bit of color below this. And with that, my painting is ready. I love how it looks. It's a very beautiful, soothing painting to look at. The final touch is to write your name, to sign it, which I will do with a marker. Let me pick out my marker and sign this beautiful painting. And it's done. I hope this was very useful for you, and I hope you create beautiful paintings like these and Leave your comments over here if you enjoyed this video, and if you want me to create more videos like this of tutorials of doing different kinds of acrylic paintings, then drop in the comments over here in the comment section so I can create such videos. Thank you. Bye bye.